All right, Solomon. So this property here that you emailed me on that you're wondering if it's a scrape. So let's run through this property a little bit. And I also want to give you, when you run across properties like this, there's other ways to look at it than just ARVs. And so this is where I'm going to try to uh, maybe start adding a few things, little tactics and tricks when you run across certain types of properties. So let's go through this property real fast. You're right, this property needs everything. I mean, we're talking windows, drywall needs to be ripped out. This thing needs to be taken down to the studs of the house, just because even the drywall is in such poor shape. Windows need to be replaced. Again, drywall, all this stuff needs to be ripped out and then re-drywalled, re-mud, new windows, new doors. Um, the electrical panel definitely needs to be redone. So a new electrical panel, probably new siding out here. Probably the roof is bad. Uh, Probably needs to be replumbed. I mean, we're talking about everything in this house, right? Uh, yeah, where I would first take a look at is the broker remarks. If it doesn't say anything about structural, then we're probably okay to still go ahead and make an offer on it on a house like this. If it's like this thing, if it says in a broker's mark, this thing is a scrape. I mean, it's not even sitting right on the foundation. Then it was a scrape, and if it's a scrape, we're just not going to mess with it. But this one looks like it's still salvageable, so let's go ahead and make an offer on it. But the question is, what do you want to offer, right? Because it's in such poor shape, our normal formula probably isn't going to work on this because this thing probably needs $125,000 of work. So this is how I want you to look at some of these that are really, really bad shape. So what I did is I expanded the search out and I got a much broader range. Um, I narrowed down the square footage. So I went to 0 to 850 because this one's like 700 square foot. Went out, a year. You can even go out a year and a half if you need to, if you need to find the properties, single family home, and then go to results and go to the bottom and start looking at some of these that have sold, um, and start looking at, what kind of condition these properties are in. So let's start to 715. So, this one's in much better shape, right? So, and I don't think it says anything about structural. So it's in much better shape. So we're already thinking, well, our property probably isn't going to sell at 215. Because, I mean, what we're gauging here is what investors are willing to pay for this house, right? So, 215, probably not. Um, this house not even close to being as rough as the other one. We're at 235. So we're already thinking that they're probably overpriced. Let's go to this 177. They don't have a picture of inside. That's not very helpful. And let's do this 175. So I mean, all these houses are better shape, right? So let's mark this guy. I'm actually going to expand this square footage out a little bit more to see if I can find a rougher house. Hang on. So I took the square footage to 1,000, 0 to 1,000, just to see if we can get some more properties. Those weren't really telling me a good story about what we should offer. Um, so we're going back to the lowest solds in the neighborhood. So let's start going through these. This Tennessee. Now here we start to see a property that is very similar shape. Uh, I do believe that this one even has some structural issues going on, but yeah, look at that kind of stuff, that kind of structural cracking in the drywall. Um, I mean, this is a very comparable house, right? So they tried to sell it at 219 and they ended up closing at 172. So, um, so structural cracks. So yeah. So now we're starting to get into some houses that we are seeing that needs quite a bit of work. I think we already looked at that one. We already looked at that one. It doesn't have a picture. This is for comps. 200. So Very similar house here, right, for 200. But we've got to take in consideration this is a bigger house. So this bigger house that's very similar condition is 150 square foot bigger. So I'm starting to think that we're kind of around that 175 to 185 range, right? We're starting to really see that. And if you want to check these, go back to your property and see kind of where proximity of where it's at to our comp property. You can do that, but I mean, we're getting a pretty good idea of where we need to be. So that's how I go about this property. So we're just really gauging what investors are going to pay versus what our spreadsheet's going to say. So when we go into our spreadsheet, we're just going to override our formula because our formula, as you can see, your ARV was right. It was spot on. I would say 320. You know, was pretty fair. Maybe 315, 320 something. You're spot on with your ARV. But we're not going to pay 223 because the house needs a ton of work. I mean, it needs $100,000 of work. No investors are going to pay 223 for that, right? They're going to pay 175 probably or 185. So we're just going to override this formula and type in 175, 185. Let's start with 175 and just kind of stay in touch with them because what's going to happen on this property is it's a banged up property. They're going to get a whole bunch of people out there making offers, and it's going to kind of be a bidding war. And they're going to have to sort through a few idiots that are going to put it into contract and that are going to be like, you know, they're going to put it on a contract for full price, and then they're going to realize, oh my God, this thing is going to take us $100,000 to fix up. We're going to be upside down, and they're going to let it go. They're going to give it back. They're not going to close on it. And so then the listing agent's going to get that property back, and then they're going to go back out to backup offers, which we're going to be one of those, and they're eventually going to start working through those. And sometimes we'll get those backup offers, sometimes we don't. It just depends. Maybe somebody offered 176 and we're 175. We just don't know. It's a numbers game out there, but that's what we're going to do. We still got to have an offer that makes sense that we know that we can sell. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to shoot you this video. But that's how you want to kind of handle these really banged up properties. So just to just kind of wrap this whole thing up. If the properties are that bad a shape, also say that they're structural, and the listing agent saying this thing is a scrape, we're not going to even offer on it. But if it's really bad shape like this, but there's no noted, there's nothing in the public notes. Maybe I should just get to this so I'm making sense. Let me pull it up here real fast. So in these notes down here, if there's nothing that says that there's structural going on, but it's still really rough shape, but it looks to be structurally sound, let's go ahead and make an offer on it. So that is pretty much it for these really tough properties. But yeah, good pick. I'm glad you sent this over. It's a great question. And let's get an offer out on it and see how it goes.